Hi, and welcome to the Root To CISO Podcast. It's me, Chris Rides. I'm going to be your host, and I'm going to be chatting to seasoned Chief Information Security Officers about their career journeys. We're going to be unencrypting their real-life stories and searching for the hidden keys to help you fast-track your cybersecurity career. Hey everybody, welcome to the Root To CISO Podcast. I'm here with Jeff Bryner. I want to thank you for joining me today. A great place to start will probably be for you to give a little bit of an update on what you're currently doing, and then let's dive into your career history.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for setting us up. I appreciate the time and the opportunity. Yeah, so my name is Jeff Bryner. I've been doing IT and security work since, well, a long time, or early or late 80s, 89, sort of thing. So it's been a while. Currently the CISO for a company called Apree Health. We're a combination of a couple different companies brought together by private equity, basically to make people healthier. It's kind of bringing the power of primary care, advanced primary care, to organizations like Lockheed Martin, JPMC, those sort of things. So we'll actually like build a clinic inside somebody's building where the employees can just go down, get primary care, go back to work, whatever, along with their families, that sort of thing. So very custom to the organizations that we deal with. And they're very concerned, of course, with the health care security of their healthcare information. So hence my team and my role there is to make sure that when we're talking to folks like Lockheed Martin, of course, they're very concerned with security of their PHI data, and so my team takes care of that sort of thing. So it's a quick catch up of where I'm at, what I'm doing currently.
Right, lovely, thanks. Yeah, I'm sure it was a very quick and easy route to straight into that CISO role. So this is going to be like a 2-minute podcast, right?
Yeah, direct straight line. Just get right out of high school and hired right into government law school.
Yeah, there was a CISO internship available, and you applied for it, and you got it, and that was basically how you did that.
Good at multiple choice questions, yes.
Right. Or as we were talking about earlier, just nowadays you can just chat GPT your way straight into a CISO role, right?
Right.
AI.
Right. Just write me a paragraph about how to do security for JPMC.
Well, let's start off with your foundation. So pre getting into cybersecurity, I'm assuming that you weren't straight into cybersecurity. What kind of things were you doing? What was your foundation?
Yeah, sure. So I used to live in Virginia, so went to Virginia Tech University up there. This is before people even had computer. I remember the engineers. It's a big engineering school. I was in the business school portion of it, and the engineers were the ones that had a computer, but they were the luggables, right? They were like 50 pounds, and they had a handle on them, which made them portable.
Right.
So no one envied the engineers who had to lug this thing around, and so we would all go to the computer lab to do any sort of computer stuff. But the degree that I got was in what was called management information systems or management science, and so it was a combination of business and computers. It wasn't just computers and math for math's sake. It was a combination of everything, finance to marketing to what was big then. It's kind of funny to see it kind of resurge as AI, decision support systems, expert systems, that sort of thing, that were kind of geared around almost esoteric business problems. Like, okay, let's pretend you're a company that has multiple shipping ports. So what's the simulations that you need to run your computer to figure out whether it's worth your time to build another port or not, rather than just build it and see if they come. Right. So the computers were all around, at least from my perspective. The place that we focused was about those sort of things, finding ways to solve that kind of level problem. So that was the start, the background, very theoretical, not very hands-on. I didn't even know how to change paper in a printer. So that was the kind of education that you got because you didn't have a computer, right? You went to visit them.
Right.
You learned about them in a book, and you wrote stuff down on paper about what screens might look like. So it was very distant compared to today. Computer security obviously was not a thing at all. No one ever talked about it. It wasn't something they worried about. So when I graduated there, all the companies that were hiring in that area, it's a Northern Virginia sort of area focus. So they're all government jobs, right? So they all wanted you to move to DC and then join military, some arm of the military, and go work on submarine systems or something like that. And I had no interest in anything like that. So I went to California, which was supposed to be just for a summer. But I ended up at this company called Protection One. It was kind of a startup, and I got a job, like I think it was $7 an hour doing database entry work.
Right.
So like, cool, I made it. I could stay here for the summer, and then I'll figure out what to do after that. sort of thing. And I think it was in RBase of all things. So look up RBase and see all them. But it was kind of like a startup, and they offered me like a PC support role in the company because it was a startup growing like a startup as well. And there was definitely a need for a more advanced version of IT. Essentially, they didn't have an IT. No one was calling it IT, but that's essentially what it turned into. And this is a theme for me. So I saw the need for this, and kind of created myself a position in the company, and they moved me to Portland, Oregon. So I went from Southern California to Portland, Oregon, and I stayed there for 1990 to just a couple months ago. So long, long time in Portland after that. And it really was being run like a startup. We grew through acquisition. It was like 150 something companies that we acquired, all these kind of smaller alarm companies. So they were doing physical security into like jewelry stores and banks and people's houses and all that sort of stuff. And then the internet happened, and everyone was like, "Oh, what's this internet thing? And like, how do we get connected to it? And like, we're a security company. We should probably worry about security." So somebody had to go figure out, all right, what does that actually mean to connect a security company to the internet? And so I remember working with BBN Planet at the time because they had this thing called a firewall that you could use to connect your company to the internet and don't worry about anything.
It's 100% secure.
Yeah, 100% secure. They showed us too. They're based in Boston, and so they flew us to Boston. They showed us this room with people all staring at green screens. They were just tailing syslog entries out of these firewalls. They're like, "That's why you're secure." So. So yeah, that's what brought me into security, was that just kind of entrance into IT at a company that needed something at that point in time. I kind of built myself a position to make all that happen.
So you were in IT initially, and then did you do any of the physical security stuff as well? Like through that, as they got those acquisitions, did you end up having to do some of that as well?
Yeah, so what we would do is like acquire. So it was a consolidation play. So there's always kind of small mom and pop companies in the markets, and then driving towards IPO, and then the market would value the combination at greater than what we'd have to go buy for. So we'd buy it like whatever, $5, and we could essentially be valued at 10 or something. Not the numbers, but something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, big into the acquisitions, and then how do we just from an IT perspective, how do we absorb that customer base along with the systems associated with it? If they're worth anything, usually they're kind of just crappy PC systems, supporting all that. And then the real challenge there from an IT perspective is how do you grow that? Because we would outgrow our systems like every year. We'd be bigger than anyone had ever been because it's all small mom and pop shops, right. And no one was really big. And so the challenge was always like, how do you grow bigger and bigger? And so that led us into another, I guess, theme here is like as there are technology shifts, being able to take advantage of those. So this shift was like towards small. There was a system made by PIC operating system. That was the database for the back end of that, and we overwhelmed it very quickly. So we moved to this new thing called Windows NT. And Microsoft single server. And I remember a guy once telling me, like, Windows NT, that's not ready for the enterprise. Using it is right there. It works.
I'm guessing when you're absorbing small mom and pop shops, there's probably an awful lot that's not ready for the enterprise, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of times you go and like find the computer, behind the desk, and it's just covered in dust. I'm like, yo, that's our computer. So yeah,
it is very valid. It's like, and when I think like I'm speaking to a lot of really experienced CISOs, and if you're somebody getting into the market, I'm guessing some people's heads are probably like, well, that was X amount of years ago, 10 years ago for you, I'm sure, like very, very recent, right? But it's X amount of years ago, times have changed, but I feel like yes, times have changed, but we see the same things happening, right?
Yeah. I mean, companies are going to try to find their place in the market. Like this went through acquisition, they're going to hit some business problem growth. In this case, how do you solve that with technology? Then things like the internet comes in, exacerbates all that. Now we're going to hook up to something, whether you're changing platforms from MIDI system to NT, all that is definitely constant, all that change. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the people that are trying to move into it now, I'm still seeing the same patterns, coming in, not, very few people are lucky enough to get a cybersecurity role straight out of, whatever they've done, whether that's college, community college, 2-year, 4-year degrees, or workshops and those sort of things. Very few people go straight into security roles. There's a lot more IT roles out there than in entry-level security ones. So that's a much more common path
Yeah.
through. Not the only path, there's a lot of other ways to go, but we still see the same things happening. Is there anything that you think, like thinking of that, you getting in, is there anything that back then you think definitely still applies now that you would give advice-wise to those people that are trying to get their break into their first security role?
Yeah, that's good. I think the foundation is important. I mean, it didn't really exist when I was there, but like I remember going through CISSP training and thinking, wow, the best part about this is that there's a word, a definition, and it means the same thing to everybody. You don't have to argue anymore about what risk means, or any of those sort of things. So I think having that foundational layer is definitely something that's super important. Even if it's from a, like, I kind of had to self teach myself the OSI model, because it's like, all right, this is all when like Ethernet was coming out and BNC cables and all that stuff, and if it got disconnected, it didn't work anymore. Okay, there's layer one, right?
Right.
So even just having that foundational model to be able to tear things down, having a common set of languages and all that is super important, even today, even still in security. I was just talking with someone about, we're running into problems with authentication. It's like, all right, what protocols are we using? Fed? Is it SAML? Is it OAC? You can tell there's gaps sometimes for people in that. But yeah, keeping up with all that. So you have a foundation, what you're building on. You have that reference architecture sort of like, all right, this is what we're doing and why and how it works together. It's super valuable.
And then moving on, you found yourself playing with the firewall that keeps everything 100% secure. Um, Probably also creating a lot more other work for you as we realized that there's nothing that's keeping us 100% secure. And so you're moving up through as an individual contributor. What did you learn during that period, and how did you see your role sort of move on into more of that leadership, sort of hands off? What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it was weird because it was a startup, a bunch of 20-year-olds, assuming management level positions, and like, oh, cool, now we got this. But I don't remember exactly how it happened. Somehow I ended up in a year-long leadership training course. I think one of the guys that I work with had left to go start this consulting company to do management training, right? Very specifically. So I stumbled into this great experience where it was literally a year of like taking all of the management literature of the day, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, right? All those sort of books that were out, dissecting every single part of it, a work group sort of thing. And then we had like a practical that we had to take it back into the company to actually apply the things that we're talking about, learning about, and reading about. I ate that up. It was like, oh, this is great. This is fantastic information. There was a bunch of common leaders around other companies in the area that I was able to learn from and get mentorship from as well. So I think that's super valuable. Like, no one should be just thrust into a leadership position without any. It's kind of, oh, good luck. Hope that this supervisor role works out for you. Let me know if you have any problems. And if you find yourself in that role, like, absolutely, like, find a mentor, find someone
Yeah.
who you can just like go to when you're like, I don't understand why this is happening or why this is not happening. But even better, like, find something like that that works for you. I mean, there's so much content, so much material nowadays. It should be relatively easy to go find something that's all right. This a little bit I can absorb, or a whole course, or something. But I think, yeah, just don't go it yourself. It's such a unique thing, to your point, to move from an IC role to a management role. Just the amount of things that you got to give up, the amount of things you got to think about differently, the amount of things you got to delegate, because it just doesn't make any sense to do anything other than that. And what does that even mean to delegate something to somebody? It sounds great. It's like write off on taxes. Oh, just write that off. What does it mean to delegate something to somebody, and how can you screw it up? Because you can very easily.
Yep.
So yeah, that was a great opportunity in there, and then it was also like, in this still Protection One sort of era that gave me the ability to use that. I mean, any kind of startup, there are more problems than solutions. So there's very little people fighting over turf. or territory. It's more like, oh, you're going to go solve that. Great, let me get out of here. When you go do that. So having an environment also that kind of allows you to take on those sort of things, take on whatever task you feel like you want to go tackle. That's a super valuable part of the equation as well.
Yeah, there's like a few points I think people can take from your experience there. First of all, a lot of people think about career development and like, they ask about budgets. I know certainly we've got a couple of final interviews happening this week, and both candidates have asked about, the career development and what the opportunities are. And it's funny, a lot of people think about, oh, will they pay for me to do training and a certificate in this, or pay for me to get my CISSP, or whatever it might be that interests them. But there's that same budget can be used an awful lot of other ways as well. And it's not all about having a certificate to say, oh, I have this. Having leadership training is invaluable, because ultimately as a leader, what you tend to find is, people often assume leadership, right? They're very good at something. People start turning to them and asking them questions, and all of a sudden they're viewed as a leader, but they've never had any management experience.
Right.
There's so many things that can go wrong. Like even wanting to give the responsibility to someone else, when that you can be the best at doing something in a business, but at some point you've got to hand it off and let somebody else have a go. And even knowing that they might not be doing it to your standards yet, to give them a chance to improve, and all of those things you learn. There's certainly a lot of that stuff that I've learned over time, and I'm still learning now, that I wish I was a bit better at. Likewise, you can't just give people things and then not help them and mentor them to actually do them.
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay.
Totally.
I've given this to this person. It's being done, and then where is it? Oh no, I got stuck at this. These things happen. So I'm thinking
Yeah.
about that career development is really important, and because there's so many different ways that you can do that, and most companies anyway, I should preface that, not all companies, but most companies really want to invest in their staff and want them to be better and want them to continue working there and have career growth, and so asking about those sort of things should be a conscious part of any decision making process.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Especially because, in the security space, the courses can get really expensive, right? If you're going to go take a SANS course or something, for example, big proponent of them. I've worked with that in Oregon a long time, but they're expensive. It's like 10 grand by the time you're through it. You get a hotel and all that stuff for a week. It's a fire hose of information, but yeah, to do it is not a light commitment for sure. So
Yeah. And then the key thing you said also is going through the training, but then putting it into practice. And I think that's what a lot of people fail to do, right? You learn something and then you don't put it into practice, and then all of a sudden you got to use it and you can't remember because you're out of practice using it, and you got to get through the books and have another read up of it. That is the key. Put it into practice straight away so it becomes part of that muscle memory.
yeah.
So like
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, even basic things like one-on-ones, right? It's a very easy thing to have people just go, oh, here's what a good one-on-one looks like. But if you don't ever use it, like you have a one-on-one coming up with someone and there's no agenda and you haven't tracked any notes and you don't even know what you're going to talk about or whatever, like it is work. You do have to prepare for those sort of things, and you get what you get out of it, what you put into it. Yeah, if you don't put it into practice, then why did you bother?
Yeah, the classic failure to prepare is preparing to fail. I think a lot of
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
the stuff that you're doing up front is the stuff that makes something work really well. And I've been as guilty as I'm sure everybody else, where you just get busy. You look at your calendar in the morning, you're like, oh, I've got that. I haven't got time to prepare for it, but that's fine because I can totally just do this. And then,
right.
you come out and you're like, that wasn't what I was planning for. I didn't see or expect this stuff. I didn't, you know.
Yeah, yeah. You can kind of wing it sometimes, and maybe it'll work out, but you're a little better off if you're prepared.
Yeah, so lots of tips there for people as they move through that leadership position. The third sort of part that I see people coming to us and sort of saying, right, I don't know where I'm going to right now in my career. I know where I want to get to, and I want to become a CISO. And there should be an awful lot of questions around why they might want to do that and what's driving that, because it's certainly different for different people. And I'm sure we'll get into some of your experiences of being a CISO so that people can know the good, the bad, and the ugly bits that you can say say about, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
But how did you end up getting that first sort of CISO position, the actual CISO title? Because that's a challenge. A lot of companies don't have one. A lot of companies don't want to give that C-level title out, and then others give it out a little bit easier, but people aren't necessarily doing what you would expect a CISO job to be.
Yeah, it is kind of fraught with peril there. If you see something that sounds like a CISO role, it is worth investigating kind of, okay, what level is it actually? And so maybe just a level set there. Like my take on what a CISO is it's kind of the highest level management person in the org with security in their title. So you may see it
Right.
as head of security in some cases, VP of security, actual CISO. It seems to run the gamut of all kinds of stuff. So, anyways, that's how mentally I tend to think about that. Because if you are that, you end up with the responsibilities of that, right? There may not be board level things. It kind of depends. That's where it's maybe a red flag in some cases. But mostly about that. So I think about that. The first level, sort of like that, very officially, was the Director of Enterprise Security at Mozilla. So I was an IC level in Mozilla. I'd been director level roles at other companies. Kind of took a step back to join Mozilla number one. Then there was an opportunity. Michael Coates had vacated his role at Mozilla and later gone on to be the CISO for Twitter. There's some other folks that left, so it kind of opened this little vacuum, if you will, of security leadership. And so there was a challenge put by the VP who had security. There's also a reorg, and so security ended up in a different place in the org. And it was like, okay, we need to recover from this. What do we do? How do we kind of revamp security there? So I took my expertise that I had from the power company and just put together a proposal like over a weekend. I'm like, all right, here's if I'm thinking about it, like here's the strategy that we need to take on. Did like a SWOT analysis, all that sort of stuff, and just made the case. Right, all right, here's the best case I can make for me in this role. Ended up with an interim role there, so which really put me through the ringer.
No pressure.
There, yeah, interim roles are like you could write a whole nother book about interim roles, good, the bad, and the ugly, sort of thing. In this case, it worked out. It was great. I had full support of the team that I was in. That's a whole other book subject. Like how do you go from being a member of a team to leading that exact same set of personalities?
Hmm.
Lots of quicksand there as well that could get in your way. But that was, I think, really the first one there. The first actual CISO title was at a company just down the road from. So I was at Mozilla's office in Portland. Just down the street was this little startup company, another startup sort of thing called Pocasa. They're kind of a high-end vacation home management firms. They have 30,000 something vacation homes around the world. They started 10 years prior from a guy who just happened to have a vacation home on the Oregon coast. And he and his brother like taught themselves PHP and they just built this company out of nowhere. And so I was talking to the CTO there because they had what was listed as a director role. And this is like the third time, but I've done this in my career. I started talking to somebody about a role, and I was like, well, really what you want is a CISO, and it should have this stuff, and it should look like this, and here's your strategy, and talk to the board of directors there as well. So that was the first one that was actually CISO as the official title there. So, but yeah, that's at least the third time where, and I would tell people, don't be afraid to do this. Don't be afraid to create your own job in a
Right.
company. If you see a need and you see you can write the story end to end, that's served me well. At least 3 or 4 times in my career where I'm like, all right, here's the next thing that needs to happen. We need to whatever reorg, create this thing. It doesn't exist. Here's a role. Here's how it fits in. Here's the job description for it. Here's what it should accomplish. That's been a game changer.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really important one that I don't think we've really spoken about on here so far, but I 100% agree. We had a retained search for a head of security role, a head of information security role, and then when I sat down with the CTO, it's public company, recently public company, sat down with the CTO who it was going to report through, and I was talking to him about the role. It became pretty obvious that this was their CISO position.
Yeah.
And so I pushed back to them and actually said, look, I think you're gonna like if you can go back and convince them to make the title a CISO title, and you like he had to go back to speak to the board and sort of talk through it. I said like first off, I think that's going to open up a lot more doors for you. It's going to give you some really good other options, and we found them a really experienced multi-time CISO to go in there. And I don't know whether actually, to be fair, I don't know whether they would have, like, whether they wouldn't have taken it if it hadn't been a CISO, because I don't, they weren't the type of person that was that precious about the title. But I definitely think it opened a lot more doors. They had a lot more other options, and it was nice to be in that consulting position and be confident enough to sort of push back on them and say, look, go back and see what you can do with this. We both agreed that it was everything that a CISO was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a super valuable part of the recruiting process. I've been through a couple of those kind of searches where they bring me in and they're still kind of formulating the role, and even just that conversation can help them formulate. Or me showing up as like, oh, that's what we don't want.
Right.
Clearly, we don't want that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that initial conversation about what is the job really, what do you really need it to do? Because that's a whole different thing. And some people don't know. They're just like, wow, here we need a CISO. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
But if you get crisp about what you need to move the needle on from to, and then how the person's skill set, can make that happen, that's a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that are in that position where, I know there's some businesses where it's challenged to get a C in the title. And there's others that especially with SEC rules and stuff like that, they should have somebody in that CISO position. And I've actually got, I think of a really good friend of mine at the moment I've been kind of talking to, and we've been sort of talking through how you have those kind of conversations, because they need a CISO. He's doing a CISO role for them right now. They're not going to hire anybody else above him. He's doing an amazing job. So that's not the concern. It's just, right, okay, let's make this, let's put what it actually is,
Yeah.
on the job description. And so I know he's going through that. So that is a challenge convincing them. Was there anything that you particularly did thinking back then that you think was good? But I love the SWOT analysis. I should just say that's one of my, like, anybody that's probably listening to this, that's hearing this, that knows me, or has heard me speak anyway, I love a SWOT analysis. I talk about do a SWOT analysis for everything, right? So, so that's my answer almost for everything.
That was great. Yeah. No, I can't think of. I mean, mostly it was just I seemed to be the right person for what they needed the from to, right, of what they were looking to do. Like I said, it was a startup growth sort of thing. They had done a bunch of really great work, taking their platform into a serverless technology, and had done a bunch of that sort of work at Mozilla. Mozilla was like the tech shift. We can talk about tech shifts later, but there was a tech shift. It's different. At this place, it was move into serverless. What does that mean? Like, can you tell a compliance story for PCI, for example, in a serverless environment, articulate, how that sort of thing would go? So I think it's a lot of that. Just, are you the right person for that moment in time? They're still raising, I think, Series C, something like that. So then also, can you talk to investors and talk to those people about your security program, that sort of stuff. So it was that intersection, just the right skills for the moment in time that they were.
Yeah, and there is a certain, like what you're kind of hinting at there, there is a like certain force of I'm the CISO, especially when you're a startup and you've got investors to speak to, or if your company is a vendor to multiple other, very large companies, for instance, oh, actually we have a CISO. That's the person you would need to speak to. He runs the team, he or she runs the team, and so there's certainly multiple reasons for people to have that title within what they're doing. So that's good.
Sure.
That's good. So these are so I get into these questions now because I love these. Talking obviously your straight path from intern CISO straight to CISO. So when we talk about like the steps you have to take, very, very few people have a straight career ladder that takes them one place to another. In your experience, have there been backward or sideward steps that either that you've seen as that, or that perhaps to the outside world might appear as that have kind of propelled your career on? Is there anything you've been through like that?
Yeah, multiple times actually, and I think it adds to some depth in my experience. So I talked about the Protection One startup that company kind of ended with a merger, and then a headquarters shift, so away from Portland to somewhere else where I didn't want to move. So I was the highest ranking person for all technology at that company. then left there to go do consulting back to the same company as a part of that, and consulting to other companies. So you could look at that as a maybe a sidestep or something like that. But that gave me a good variety of experiences. Worked with Great Plains, Microsoft on some stuff, and some other companies on some stuff, just to kind of get out of the one company that I'd been in at that point in time for a while. Then I found myself at the power company in Portland doing some consulting work there as well. And then the recession hit, and it was like, oh, what do you do during a recession? Taking a role at a utility company is a pretty good. People pay their bills in a recession,
Right.
and being part of a monopoly is not a safe place to land. So I'd done some consulting work in there, and then at the same time they were trying to build up their security team to actually get a kind of formal security team there. So I joined that security team as an IC in there. And this is at the point in time where security was just starting to become a real focus point in the power industry. A variety of things from like SOC 404, all that was coming out because of Enron, and they were actually an Enron company, which is a whole other story.
Yeah.
And then the NERC-CIP, the whole protection program around the power companies was coming out at the same time. We were one of the first companies to go through that, so there was like a really good opportunity to go deep in terms of everything from compliance to, we also rolled out like wireless meters throughout the Portland area, sort of stuff. So good projects to kind of dig into there. But at an IC level role, and that's another place where I built another position in there. There was definitely a need for architecture, for like security architecture to happen there, because they had done a bunch of things and they'd done them all differently over a period of time, depending on when and where and personalities and whatever tech was available at the time and that sort of stuff, and needed to rationalize. They had like 400 something disparate systems that were all essentially run differently, right? It's like, all right, if there's any place that needed architecture, is this place. So I built a security architect role that eventually also built a whole team of architects to be able to do that kind of stuff there, which is great. So that was a kind of director level role there. So that same sort of journey, right, up to that. And then while I was there, this recruiter cold called me from Mozilla. And I was like, Mozilla, are you guys like, you're just like four people in a garage somewhere, right? Like you don't, is there a real company here? Or you're just kind of every now and again spitting out a browser. And it turns out they're a real company, like 1,200 people around the world, 10 offices, all over the place. They actually had real stuff, and they brought me to California to interview and all that stuff, and it was an amazing experience. But it was another shift, right, from essentially a director level architect role at PGE to an IC in Mozilla. Less money, you name it, right? It was a total shift of everything, high tech instead of utility. There was a pension at PGE. There's no pension at Mozilla, but definitely an opportunity to kind of do completely different things. And oddly enough, some of it was based on the work that I did while I was at PGE. So nothing against the utility culture, but it's a little stagnant. People tend to kind of come on board when they're 18 and they retire 40 years later. So same people, when you kind of have to wait for them to retire.
Right. Yeah.
In some cases, the tech is stagnant as well. Like you only build it down like only so often, and you don't refresh that tech because it's working and you already paid for it, and you're not going to touch it, right? In case you need to. And there's
Because if you do, it might fall over, right?
Yeah, right. It might fall over. Yeah, you don't want to be the one that the last person who touches it before there's some kind of event, right? So I've done a bunch of side stuff while I was at Mozilla, including done 3 DEF CON talks, a couple of them on merging the Connect Microsoft Connect with like Metasploit, so to Connect exploit, and then a bunch of other stuff as well there. So it gave me that kind of go do something else sort of thing, and that's what got Mozilla interested. Is there's a couple of other side projects that they wanted to kind of build on from there. But yeah, it was definitely times where I've taken steps either backwards, however you want to look at it, backwards or sideways, and that allowed me to kind of go further as a result of that.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like a lot of these things, when you're speaking to people, they don't see them as a backwards or sideways step, but somebody else that's looking from the outside maybe might do, but they don't know the context for it. And so sometimes I think if you're an individual that's worried about that, oh, is this a backwards or sideways step? Actually, doesn't really matter. If you think it's something that's going to move your career on, then go with it. Doesn't matter what other people think, because ultimately those people aren't your boss. They're not, it doesn't matter. There's always going to be somebody that has thoughts on one thing or another, and you can't control that. All you can control is whether you think it's right for you. And so, yeah, I would encourage people not to be too sensitive around that, because there's so many, nobody's got, and even if it's forced on you, I should say that as well, because we've seen a lot of layoffs and stuff, and ultimately all those people have to pay mortgages or car payments or rent or whatever it is. And so it might mean that you have to take a role that isn't at the same level that as you were, or you don't perceive it necessarily to be. But it could be something, those sort of things are the things that can make a huge difference in your career and hockey stick you really quickly. So never get too sort of down on that. You've got your background, as you're talking about this, probably something that sticks out to me is that you've worked in so many different industries. Like, how on earth, like you say, how do you go to a company that's sort of all about tech, from a company that was, I would imagine more bureaucratic, a lot slower to move, and like throughout your career, you've worked in so many different industries.
Yeah. I remember going from the power company where literally nobody brought like a laptop to a meeting. It was all like you'd print out the agenda on a printer and like take it to the meeting, and then to Mozilla where it was all distributed around the world, and also a power company. Everyone's physically in the office, so you're not working, right?
Right.
There was no remote work. And then go to Mozilla, where it's like literally it's around the world, every time zone you can imagine. Everything is remote. Everything's on video conference. Everything's real time on laptops and Google Docs. All that stuff is like just mind blowing shit.
That's a huge learning curve, right? To go to two such very different companies. How do you feel that gap?
I was hungry for it, frankly. I was like looking to get into a world that was more fast paced. We didn't have to wait 40 years for someone to retire to do
Right.
something. I remember like even just put in like an order. I needed an extra monitor, like they have a couple monitors, and like they delivered it the same day. And I'm like, mind blown. That would have never happened in our industry. Doing basic stuff like that was like it was great. It was a very very big step forward. But yeah, I think that if you are doing that kind of shift, just keeping your mind open and also recognizing like when there's a difference and applaud it. It's a great thing. And let them know like, hey, this is great. You're doing this. I remember someone asking me too, like, what kind of snacks do you have at the our company? Like, snacks? There's no snacks. There's not any creamer. Like, there's no coffee. They have a whole snack bar. So recognizing those differences and call them out for people who maybe haven't made that shift, so they can kind of also appreciate, what they've got. And it sounds small, but it's a big thing as well. But yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I guess changing industries also allowed me to kind of mix my experiences from those industries together. Like one thing the power industry does really well, I've never seen it done better in any other industry, is plan. Like they will plan 30 years in advance. They were doing this while I was at the power company in Portland for shutting down coal power plant. You don't just do that overnight. It takes a lot of work. You do need decades of planning to figure out where you're going to get the power from, right? So that was an ingrained part of the culture to be able to do planning. Not all companies can do it. Most companies do it terribly, but having even just a taste of that capability, right, and bringing that into some other industry that maybe is terrible at planning or never even thought about it, big shift. So I like to think about it that way. Like, what am I bringing from this industry to this other industry? Is there something I know that I can, pull out there? Super valuable.
Yeah, you like all of your experience builds up, and I think having the more broad experience you can have, the better for the next company that you're coming into. Because if you're just bringing in, I don't think this, like we talk about how important diversity is in our industry, and this should absolutely be a part of that conversation, right? Having the diverse background and working in a diverse set of industries means that any new industry you move into, you bring all of that experience with you, and that's so important, because the people that are trying to get in are diverse, and they're probably not specialist in one particular, targeting one particular type of company, right? They've probably targeted all sorts, and they start understanding the differences and applying things that they've learned. So it's good for us to be able to do the same. And had you worked in healthcare prior to Apri?
No, it was another cold call from a recruiter saying, "Hey, we've got this role. It's at this company. It's kind of a high tech company applying high tech stuff to healthcare, mostly for like navigation and advocacy, that sort of stuff." And so, yeah, when I met the folks there, it was like, "Oh, it is in healthcare. They're not putting shots in arms, but definitely using tech and high tech." And there was a intersection back to the previous kind of conversation to my skill set in terms of where they were trying to go. Where they're trying to go, start from here, move over there, do this stuff, move into the cloud, all those sort of things. And so it's like, yeah, I have that in my background and my experience. I can help and I can learn as well what it looks like to be in a healthcare organization. And it was during COVID as well. And the other big thing was they had an impact on COVID. We ran the back end for vaccines.gov. So when you search for vaccines, it was our tech on the back end that made that happen. So there was an immediate impact during COVID, which felt really great.
Yeah, it's nice to feel like you're making a difference. I think with any company, I talked about this actually with somebody else, but the mission, like understanding what the mission of the company is, understanding what the business goal is, and then believing in that mission and feeling like you are making a difference. I see a lot of people move companies because maybe some of them have lost faith in the mission of the company and what they're doing, and they want to make a real difference. And that seems to be something that I see more and more. I think especially as you get to these more senior levels, the pay scales go up, considerably, and it gives you options. It gives you options to maybe choose who you want to work for and where you want to work, not based solely on who's going to dangle the biggest carrot. It's like, okay, I believe in this, I can make a difference and I can leave a legacy. I've spoke to a couple of, and I know of a couple of CISOs that have started up companies and done very, very well, and a few that are at the point where they probably don't need to work, but they choose to work for certain companies doing certain things because they feel like they're making a difference.
Yeah.
So it's nice to know that you're doing that. You work for a company that, through unprecedented times, as we heard a lot, that sentence, right? Was doing something about it and making a difference. So that's good.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, I mean, I'm a sucker for that sort of thing, which is why Mozilla was really attractive, totally principle based, having Mozilla Manifesto, right? All this stuff. And it's like, yeah, I'm changing the world, sort of thing, and did some really high impact work there. But then, yeah, to be in a healthcare company, my thought about it was always like, this is a time when everyone is going to experience their healthcare system, like it or not,
Right.
some way, shape, or form, you're going to intersect with your healthcare system. And if I can be a part of healthcare to make that better in any way, shape, or form, yeah, sign me up. So yeah, totally.
Nice. So if you look at other CISOs that are out there doing sort of an amazing job, whether that's working for companies with great missions or just personally they're doing a good job. You got anybody that kind of stands out? You want to kind of mention, give them a
Yeah.
shout out, sort of thing.
Yeah, sure. There are a couple, maybe not this. So what's really tough, for me anyways, is to get visibility into the CISO's program. A lot of them are just purposefully, right,
Right.
ambiguous. You can kind of see them, but there are a couple that stand out to me. So the work that like Bill Venerable is doing at the Google Cloud, we're a Google Cloud customer. We're very deep in relationships with Google, and I think he's done a really great job of like forming specific verticals. Like there's a healthcare vertical within the office of the CISO that has some great representatives, Taylor and those folks over there, that are very good at reaching out and like making sure that Google's not just a search engine. There's spaces associated with it. You know who to contact and how to get help, those sort of things. So that's really great to see. I think just to be able to know how to get resources out of such a giant like that. And then of course he's just a really great mind. This blog is awesome. And there's a lot of those kind of folks also that have I had CISO roles and moved on or done other things, kind of like the Wendy Nathers of the world, Dave Lewis, those sort of deep thinkers right in the industry. When you look at them and they come up with stuff like the Citadels framework, it's the famous sort of thing. And then there's another one that I actually went back yesterday. I saw this question on the list. I'm like, I got to remember who this guy was. It's been a while since I looked at his work, but it's Ryan McGeehan. He goes by Magoo, right? Magoo at medium.com. He's got a really, really deep, this could be like a college course, whole series of blog posts on just startup security, which is really like how do you go from zero to hero in terms of your security program. And he does a fantastic job, I think. And I reference his stuff quite a bit to go back and just kind of reframe my own thinking in some cases about mean, you name it, he's got blogs on everything. So yeah, those folks in particular, I guess, come to
That sounds about what was his name again? What's the name of the, do you know what the name of the blog
mind.
is?
Ryan McGeehan, and it's magoo.medium.com, Magoo.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I haven't come across that. I'll have to check it out. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah,
I think a lot of the people that we interact with are startups. Some of them really early stages, first series, first lot of funding. Some of them a little bit further along.
mhm,
We build, like if they're a cybersecurity company, we're building them their go-to-market teams, finding them field CISOs, for
okay,
instance. You know, those
yeah,
early stage CISO roles that some people feel are a bit more salesy than
yeah,
others. You know, those sort of things.
right,
And so that sort of thing sounds really interesting. I have to see if I can get him on there.
yes,
I would like to get Phil on here as well. We've
yeah,
recorded a couple of previous episodes with we got two CISOs that have come out of Alphabet that are in sort of Alphabet arms, sort of spun out
yeah,
companies, I guess is probably the right way to describe them.
yeah,
So yeah, I have to
yeah,
see if I can get Phil on there, Phil on here if I
yeah.
can. I don't know him
That'd be great.
personally, but
I don't either.
maybe my accent will help, right? That's
Yeah,
the
there you
thing.
go. Give him lots of compliments or something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know where he's from originally, but I think he's British as well.
Mhm, mhm.
So so
So yeah,
yeah, maybe that'll help, that commonality. We'll see.
there you
Or
go.
maybe it'll
Yeah.
be the opposite, right? Oh my goodness, I want to speak to another Brit. We'll have to see. What what attributes, and I know like this is something I don't know why I explain it. I feel like I explain this in almost every podcast that I record, but I sort of went out and this, when I was first putting together Root to CISO, this kind of came out of all the panels I was doing with CISOs talking about their careers. And then before that, or as part of the panels, I'd started asking a lot of CISOs about like the attributes that they thought were important to be a successful CISO. And so I'm absolutely going to ask you that. But I went out sort of 500, over 500 CISOs. I don't know where we are with actual replies. I think we've had over 200, and I kind of collated. I have at this point, I've got a top 10 because there is a definite, like certain ones that we always see. And so, yeah, I would love to know what you think sort of the top three attributes that a successful CISO needs, at least the ones that you've seen throughout your career.
Yeah, I struggle with this question, but I do have an answer for you. I don't know that I've got three like discrete ones,
Yeah.
but for me, what the difference in a CISO role, what that boils down to, is that so if you take a look at other roles, you're like a pen tester, you need to figure out how to go attack systems. If you're a social engineer, you got to figure out how to go get through people. If you're maybe a cloud security engineer, it's all about the mechanisms of that. To me, CISOs are organizational hackers. Your job is to figure out how to get the things that you need out of the organization, whatever way that works, to move the security program forward. So there's a bunch of attributes maybe as part of that, but that's the goal really is like it could be you got to work the budget process. It could be you got to work the culture, right? It could be you got to work with recruiting, you hire a bunch of people and they don't have that, but there's something you got to figure out how to work the organization. Like that's the number one goal. It could be interfacing with board of directors to get them on board with where you're trying to take the security program. It could be external investors or customers. There's always something, and it's different. I think for most every company, there's commonalities, of course, to all that. But like figuring it out, and it could change over time too. Like you go through acquisitions or changes in ownership. Maybe you've gotten a whole different focus now, a different market. You gave up something. It change over time. But that one thing of like CISO's focusing is on how do I get what I need for the security program out of the organization. We used to call it the dollar list back at so like if I've got a dollar to spend, I need to have a prioritized list of like here's how we're going to go spend that thing. Here's where I'm going to make use of it. And if you got $2, great. Here's where I'm going to go do that, right? But keeping that ledger, I think is the key. I'm sure I really gave it some deeper thought. I could maybe figure out what are the top three big attributes there. But there's an avenue of like self awareness, right?
Yeah.
As well like building relationships across the org, that sort of thing, and then some sort of future state thought. Maybe that boils down into those kind of three.
That's an amazing description. without giving me the three, because I thought of three and then you started naming them and it was like, okay, that kind of is the three. But that's a really, I've never heard anybody describe it like that, of sort of hacking the organization to get security to work. And that's a great description of what CISOs are doing. Simple and understandable for people that are in our industry. So that's brilliant. I think like the things that came out from your description there were, first off, you can't hack an organization without understanding it first. And so it's having that business understanding, understanding the business that you work for, understanding what their priorities are, understanding what the individual's priorities are, and what their goals are, and how security can enable them. So it can be used as an enabler to get the company to where it needs to be. So that was one that I would have pulled from that.
Yeah, yeah. That level of self-awareness or understanding, just like, especially to your point, the business problem. A lot of people just, well, I don't need to know the business. I'm just doing security. Like you've already misstepped.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you've got to understand it before you can do the rest of it. And then it's like the self-awareness of where you fit within like that role and within the business, even be able to do that job, kind of falls into things like, being able to build relationships, like understanding how you build them and being able to communicate really well to every single level of those, those people. I think you probably covered a whole bunch there, because then I would throw in planning, right?
Right.
The stuff you talked
I'm
about
an
was
outcome. I'm an outcomes kind of guy. So to me, you're like three attributes. I'm like, well, here's what I want to get done.
right. And then we have to hack it back, right? That's what we're doing. Reverse engineering.
Yeah, reverse.
No, that's a really unique and thoughtful description, which I think is great. Going to make a great soundbite later on. We'll use that one. That'll be an attributed quote.
Be the one quote I get remembered for. That's good. That's fun.
It's a good one. I think it's a good one. So there you go. Yeah, better to have a good quote that they remember you for rather than a bad one.
Yeah, better. I'll take that.
So going back, you've been in the industry a fair amount of time. And if you could go back to early career Jeff and say to yourself, right, other than, buy Amazon, buy Amazon stock really early, or Apple stock, or whatever it might be, what's the one piece of advice you think you could give yourself now looking back? That's a great learning actually for everybody else that's maybe early mid-career that hasn't come across whatever this might be.
Yeah. I think if I had to distill it down to one, we kind of talked about it as we're ramping up here, but I think paying attention to open source and things that you can get from and contribute to open source would be something that I never really thought about until I ended up in Mozilla. But it's super powerful. Like we were talking about, how do people get into the security industry? Like if you go look at, so the word Bugs Bounty started at Netscape, which became, of course, Mozilla. So it kind of originated there. And if you just looked at, like, if your goal is to get into pen testing, there's a whole history of bugs. Literally, they're still there. They're open. You can look at them. You can see them. You can watch from stem to stern, right? How a bug was found, how it was triaged, how somebody fixed it, then how that led to maybe the finding of the next one, sort of thing. It's all there for people to absorb, to understand, and it's all of the history of every single bit of technology since the internet started, because it touches everything, quite literally. And then there's the other side of the where I'm learning from it and contributing, learning by contributing to it. So GitHub has a great best first commit sort of tag as part of their projects, and so those are projects looking for people to help on a thing. There's like instant experience there. Usually when people are saying how do I get security, what they really mean is like how do I get experience that I can demonstrate to someone that I know what I'm doing, or I can contribute to a project, I can help move the needle on something. So I think I would whittle it down to that, like pay attention to open source. Don't forget about it. We seem to be in this contraction away from open source and more towards, I'm going to go create my hidden AI company, make a bunch of money, that sort of thing. Is like open source is still important. It's all embedded in there, and there's a bunch of stuff you can get either from contributing to, learning from open source to help your security career.
Yeah, I feel like forget the Mozilla were such a big proponent of that. Was one of their key things they were well known for, right? The whole open source, and I guess
Yeah.
you know, putting that up against the very well known browsers that weren't open source,
Yeah.
of course. Uh,
Funny, we used to get bug reports for your source code is open on the internet. Oh my God, you need to close this down. It's like, okay, maybe I'll give you a little history lesson about Mozilla. Like, like that's sort of on purpose.
Now, you were saying there's kind of like with the history of bugs and how they were triaged and stuff. Is there actually somewhere specific you can go and get that kind of information, or is there anywhere that you've
Yeah.
seen it?
Yeah, that would be it. There's a lot to learn just in like uncovering Bugzilla. You just go to bugzilla.mozilla.org, sign up for an account there. You can look at all the free bugs, open bugs, stuff that's there. Of course, if they're working on something currently, they close it just so can actually
Right.
fix the problem before it gets released. But that history is all there, and they very purposely will make sure that bugs after they're fixed and there's upgrade periods of time that bug is open, just so people can do that learning from there. So yeah, there's not like a guide. Maybe that would make a great book. Maybe in my retirement, I'll write a book about how to learn security from open source mistakes or something like that. Probably a really good book in there for that. But yeah, that would be that would be the process basically. Is like go look through Bugzilla for something that you think was interesting or something that you know about. There's a lot of links even there on stories covering bugs and things like that. But yeah, there's just a tremendous amount of detail also in all of that.
Yeah, yeah, there definitely is a book in that, I'm sure, and there's probably a whole bunch of places you online you can probably learn about a lot of this stuff, and including even as basic as maybe learning how to ethically put forward something that you've found, right? How to submit
Yeah,
vulnerability and how you manage
sure.
that, how long, some companies are better at getting back to people than others when these sort of things are found. And I will say that
Yeah,
I would imagine there's nothing more frustrating than having found something like this and be reaching out to try and tell people and just not hear anything, which we hear is, it's not unheard of,
yeah,
let's face it.
yeah.
Um,
I think that's one thing that Mozilla's done really well is that they will reply. Like they've been very good at curating the bug program. The web bug bounty program was in my team at the time, and so it's definitely a thing we focus on, making sure that if we get reports, especially if they're valid and they're good and it makes sense, that we reply that we're actually doing something about it and bring the person who reported it along for the ride in there. And yeah, I mean, it's actually fun to do that. So,
Yeah, great way to learn, and a great way not only for those that are trying to get into the industry, but probably also those that are in the industry already. I always say people should kind of follow. You can work in security, but there are so many different things that you can do within security that you want to follow your passion, and if it happens to lie within that, then I know the people in our industry are passionate about these things, and if you want to go and do that in your own time, and these are things that you can like they're very public, right? If you found a CVE and or a lot of these companies will have the wall of fame or other things that
yeah,
they put up.
yeah, totally.
Um,
Yeah.
all valid things to be on resumes and whatever branding, LinkedIn and where other things that you do. Because great job, like we need more people doing this sort of stuff. So that's exactly how it
Yeah.
should be.
Yeah, totally. Yep. Yep.
Now I've got a final question for you. And
Sure.
my only worry is maybe we just answered it, but maybe you got something else. So my final question is just like, you've been in the industry a while, you've been a hiring manager for a long time. There are a lot of people out there that are trying to stand out, and maybe I'll make this a two-part question. So there are a lot of people trying to get out and be different from every other application if that's how they're trying to get the roles, right? And I think there's a couple of things. First off, would be as an entry level person, what can an entry level person do? And do you have any particular feelings around sort of the opportunities and entry level and how we can produce maybe more of those entry level opportunities? So that's one. And then the second part would be for somebody more experienced that maybe is already in the industry.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for me, every time I'm doing hiring, what I'm looking for in the sea of applications, as you were calling it, is what I want to know is why is the place that you worked different because you were there? or like, what did you contribute? How did you move the needle on whatever it was that you worked on? It could be I was entry level at this place and I helped change this from this to that system, process, help the company achieve some goal or something. What you tend to get, especially from entry level folks, is just a list of technology, right? Here's all the technologies I've seen in 6 months. And so that's why you should hire me, because I know what all these things are or whatever. And then what it doesn't tell me is, do you know how to apply any of that? Did you actually use any of that to make a difference in any way, shape, or form? So to me, like whether someone is entry level or I'm hiring a senior manager or a director or a VP or whatever, that's what I want to get to. And I'm either going to get there through the resume or through the interviewing process, right, to find out. Because what I want to know is that, all right, I have a particular set of problems that I'm dealing with right now, and I want to know how you would bring those skills to help me move the needle on those particular problems. Whether it's an intern or a VP, it's the same issue for me always, and I'm trying to get that out of the resume or the cover letter or the interview process, or like somewhere from references or something, so that I can know and understand that you're able to figure out, okay, here's where the company is, and here's where they want to be, and here's the steps, or I'm going to make a difference by making this happen, or there's a moonshot, or like whatever, something, right, that goes along there that will help me figure out if you're the right person for the role. So I always distill it down to that. Like, why is that place different? Because you were there.
Love that. Yeah, I think that's great, because so many people are passionate and want to make a difference, and actually quite a lot of them are moving on because they're not being given the opportunity to make a difference. So that's a twofold question, because first off, you're finding out how they feel like they made a difference, or how they could have made a difference, right? What they've been doing, and you don't have to have been working in cybersecurity to have done that.
Right.
But secondly, also, you're telling them without telling them that you're coming here to make a difference, right? I'm going to 100% give you that opportunity, and I'm going to hire you because I want you to come here and make a difference. And for almost everybody I speak to, I was going to be I'm going to say like all of the good candidates, which I don't know whether that's the right thing to say, but certainly all of the ones that really impress me are the ones that want to make a difference, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that people that are just like, right, I'm just looking for the next place that's gonna pay me like the most amount of money. That's absolutely fine. Everybody's got their own reasons for doing things, and I'm not one to judge. I don't know your situation, your family situation. I don't know what drives that, or your past, right? And that's fine. But certainly the ones that impress me are the ones that are right, I want to go and make a difference. And in my experience, if you're going in and making a difference, the money and the other stuff generally comes with it anyway.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, as well as advancement opportunities and all that sort of thing should just flow from that, and it should be an intersection to your unique skills. I used to ask, what uniquely qualifies you for this role? Now it's more about what uniquely qualifies you to help me fix this problem. Like, I'm hiring you because I don't want this problem anymore, and I want you to solve it for me.
Yeah, I'm hiring to solve this exact problem, so please tell me how you're going to do it.
Do it now.
Yeah.
Right.
I haven't got any other questions for you. I probably have a whole bunch. We'll finish this off and I'll have a whole bunch. Maybe we'll get a bunch of people sending messages in, and you can see if there's anything, and let's see if you get the time to answer any of those as well. But thank you.
Worries,
this has been really enjoyable and really interesting.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks for setting it up. I hope I was cogent and gave some interesting information.
Well, I think so. Worst case, if it's just me listening back on it, I've really enjoyed it. So if we have zero audience, right?
At least
I guess,
one thumbs up.
Yeah, exactly. You've definitely got one person bought in, so that's good. Thank you so much, Jeff. I so appreciate your time. You take care. We'll stay in touch, I'm sure.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to the Root to CISO podcast. If there's something you really want me to ask on the next episode, or if you're a CISO who wants to inspire the next generation, please reach out. I'll leave a URL to my LinkedIn profile, and make sure you connect and message me there. We're always looking for feedback, so please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.